Welcome to Molden and Schmidt, the podcast where we get to the bottom of the big questions about motoring and particularly how to make it more sustainable. I'm Nick Molden. I run a company called Emissions Analytics. We do independent real world testing all around the world, trying to get to the bottom of what the real world emissions from vehicles are. With me is Oliver Schmidt. Hi, Oliver.
Hi Nick. Yeah, my name is Oliver Schmidt. I've been working in the automotive industry for 25 years, but to most of the people, of course, I'm known because of my involvement into Dieselgate. But I guess we have an interesting topic for today, so why don't you just give us a lead up to it?
We do, and it sort of picks up on previous things we've discussed, but particularly looking at what's happening to internal combustion engines and their phase out. In the UK, it's a hard ban in 2035. In the EU, it's pretty much as tough as that. So, but is this going to happen? And is the industry now doing a concerted effort to fight back against that? And I think actually today it would be really good to look at the differences between the UK and Europe, because what Europe does influences what happens in the UK. And my perception in the
Hmm.
UK at the moment is that there is no softening on the ban at all. Politically, everyone is still
Yeah.
completely bought into it. We've got a general election now going on. And why that is important is, or why the UK might be taking that position, is because the UK has no significant domestically owned car industry. So if it were that lots of Chinese electric vehicles came into the UK, it wouldn't have the same serious impact as it might in the European Union. So let's look at it
Yeah.
from the EU side. So from your position in Germany, I know you're tracking what's going on. You know a lot about this.
Yeah.
What's it looking like sitting there in Germany?
This- So basically, if we make up a timeline, after the ban came out, it was always the company Porsche in the beginning that said, "Okay, we cannot ban them. We need to lobby for e-fuels. We need to have a technical solution that is also CO2 neutral, but that still gives us the possibility to drive internal combustion engines." And this even went so far that after the last election here in Germany, that the German Secretary of Transportation, Volker Wissing, that he went to Brussels and stopped the ban for quite a while, negotiating some terms into the ban. So this is the first step that happened. Then the next company that came around was BMW. BMW made a public announcement. We will not focus on electric vehicles only. We will leave our platforms as they are, so they can whether be built as an EV or as an internal combustion engines. We will not do electric vehicle platforms only. Then I think the next company that came out was Skoda. So we know Volkswagen, Skoda, Porsche, that's basically all one group. So Porsche has been lobbying for e-fuels for quite a while. Then the new Porsche CEO the new Skoda CEO came out and said, "Yeah, we might reconsider this ban. We might need to take a look into it." So I think this was just a testing what the Volkswagen Group did there, because 3-4 weeks later, the big announcement by Volkswagen and Audi came out that they now are looking into internal combustion engines and especially in plug-in hybrids. It looks like they will not, with the dropping EV sales, it looks like they will not meet their CO2 targets. And to compensate for this, they have to sell more plug-in hybrids. As we discussed in earlier episodes, plug-in hybrids is a way to compensate this and to get good results faster. So this was the next company coming out, Volkswagen and Audi. Then Mercedes came around the corner and said, we will stop our development of the electric platform only that was supposed to be launched in 2028. So they stopped this and said, no, we will do it like BMW does. We will have a platform that can host both an electric motor or internal combustion engine. And then what I found pretty significant was about 2 weekends ago, I think. It was the Congress of the Christian Democratic Union, the biggest party here in Germany. I guess most of the people know our long-term chancellor Angela Merkel. She was in that party. So at the moment they are not on the at the reign, but maybe they will be soon. So they had their big congress, and actually in this congress they picked up the position of the Secretary of Transportation, who is a liberal, and they picked up this position and said, yeah, we might need to reconsider this ban completely. And for me, the fun part of this is, so Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the Parliament of the European Union, she is a member of that party too. So they were giving all these speeches. We need to revisit this ban in 2035 and so on and so on. And 5 minutes later, we had Ursula von der Leyen on stage, the person really in charge of that ban that pushed this ban in Brussels. Then she came on the stage, and it was, you could see it was difficult for her not to comment on the topic. So that's what I have observed in the automotive industry. What's currently going on there?
And of course, I mean, we talk about a 2035 ban, but there's actually a much earlier date which is very significant, which is 2026. So within the European phase out rules, there's a formal review of how it's going in 2026. You know, are electric vehicles gathering momentum? Are we still on track? Or do we need to look at it again? So clearly, it seems like there's these announcements by manufacturers are in preparation for that potentially. But do you see that it is a concerted effort? You know, are the manufacturers in a way gathering together to try and put concerted pressure on politicians in the context of the European elections
Yeah.
shortly, or is it just individual manufacturers speaking, from their own commercial interests?
So what I just mentioned, this change of mind in the Christian Democratic Union here, I think this shows that the effort of the automotive manufacturers, at least here in Germany, was pretty successful. So if our major party here in Germany really goes publicly on stage and says this, I think this is pretty significant. There might be a reason behind it why they did it. We have the European election coming up soon. I think it's next weekend or the weekend after. European election is taking place, and of course, everybody is afraid of a swing to the right wing parties. Everybody is afraid here that the right wing parties will get big support. Luckily, or yeah, I would say, yeah, I call it luckily. Luckily, they made some huge mistakes there. They now had connections to Russia, to China, and they had to remove their candidates and stuff like this. So looks like they are destroying themselves. But in order to draw voters from these parties, I think this was one of the efforts too that they did something like this. So I would say, yeah, it was orchestrated by the automotive industry, but willingly and happily picked up by liberal parties and what you would call middle to right wing, but not totally right wing Nazi parties.
Right. But where do you think, if assuming that's true, where do you think that then leaves Stellantis, the other big
Oh yeah,
non-German automotive
yeah,
manufacturer, for listeners, owners, Peugeot, Citroen, Vauxhall, Opel, also Jeep,
yeah, yeah.
big European manufacturer, but not German.
Yeah.
How are they going to play it?
They recently made an announcement too. They formed a partnership with a Chinese manufacturer, and they will stop all their electric vehicles, it looks like at the moment, and they will start selling these Chinese electric vehicles. I don't know if they will do it under the known brands that you just summed up, or if they will have a new Chinese brand that they will use for it. I have no idea there. But what's pretty interesting, it's an observation I recently made. So I have a friend that wants to buy a Peugeot 208, and I have another friend that owns an electric one that is, I think, 2 years old. So we went into the dealership and looked at the new vehicle. So they decontented the new vehicle completely, and it's now 5,000 euro more expensive. Instead of the free three-phase charging that you had in the past, you now only have one-phase charging. To charge this vehicle at home, you need about 24 hours. So it really looks like Stellantis is trying to step out of it and getting the Chinese manufacturer in.
I think the Chinese partner they've lined up is a company called Leap Motor, which
Yeah.
people, would be a new entrant to the European market. And if your theory is right, does that mean then Stellantis, the fully owned, Western Stellantis, will retreat back to doing internal combustion engines and hybrids only, in your view?
I don't know if they will do hybrid. I don't know. Are they that big in hybrids? I could not
Not
recount
hugely,
now
not right
pretty
now, but
successful Stellantis hybrids. I think, yeah, there is they have these mild hybrids. I think if you look at the Fiat 500 lineup that's still available, or that was available until a few months ago, there were a lot of mild hybrids, but they didn't have the full hybrids or plug-in hybrids. They have some in the Jeep program, I know that, but I don't think they are not as known for hybrids as other Japanese manufacturers. I think the really well-known manufacturers in hybrid, I would always consider the Chinese.
well, in fact, we with Stellantis, we had the rather extraordinary announcement this week that the Fiat 500e, the all-electric Fiat 500, due to lack of demand, is now going to have an internal combustion engine installed on the
Yeah,
platform in the form
yeah,
of a mild hybrid. So, in a sense, that's probably the sign of the times at the moment. But it seems
yeah.
to me, from my point of view, though, that Stellantis seems to be trying to play it both ways. You've got the boss of it, Carlos Tavares, on the one hand saying, the Chinese are coming. This is going to be incredibly painful and very difficult, and Europe really needs to get on it. But at the same time, it may well be, parking its EV efforts within a joint venture and looking to make money out of internal combustion engine Jeeps and their other, big sellers. So it may be
Yeah.
that they will try and play it both ways, while the German companies do the heavy lifting of trying to persuade the European authorities to dilute the ban. Is
Could be.
that a plausible interpretation?
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty reasonable. So in the Volkswagen Group, you can see the same. They just formed this partnership with a Chinese company called Xpeng, and they are now co-developing vehicles in China, mainly taking the infotainment system or the electronic gadgets. But I think this could be a way that the Volkswagen Group is looking into, like Stellantis does. Yeah, but I think that paints a pretty good picture what you just draw up there. Yeah,
Yeah. And I suppose my concern through all of this is, and ultimately why we're here is to make motoring more sustainable. So whatever
yeah,
happens with reviewing the ban in 2026, the concern needs to be about what shakes out afterwards. It's
yeah,
quite clear that electric vehicles at the moment are not as green as they're made out. The manufacturing emissions are rather high, the tire emissions are higher than expected. So they're clearly not a panacea. But the danger is that we have some hiatus brought about by the lobbying of the
yeah.
German car manufacturers, which leads to an even worse outcome. Or it could lead to a better outcome if we moved rapidly into a very hybridized situation. So the key
Yeah.
thing for me is there is a change of tune. There is a new European Parliament elected. How can we make it, or what's the likelihood that this shakes out in a way that is actually better for the environment? Do you
Yeah.
think that is a more likely outcome, or could it lead just to a retrogressive move back to, almost like in a Trump style way of saying, oh no, we're not having any of that. We're
Uh,
going, we like big gasoline engines. We're going to go back to a former world. Which within the European Union, which do you think is a more likely way this shakes out?
yeah, the question for me is always, what will the CO2 targets be? You cannot meet really stringent CO2 targets with internal combustion engines, even with hybrids. We discussed this. A hybrid might be 40% under the comparable internal combustion engines. But if you give CO2 targets that are 50, 60% lower, like they plan for the new greenhouse gas regulations in the US, if you have like this, then you basically force a mixture into the market, but you leave it to the OEMs to decide on the technology. And my personal hope is that we see the same situation here. That basically stringent targets are given. As you said, we want the best for the environment, so I need a stringent CO2 target. Otherwise, we can't get net zero and stuff like this if we don't have the stringent targets. But leave it to the manufacturers, leave it to the technology to come up with a solution. We already discussed this. There are so many possibilities, so many mixtures that you can make up: e-fuels, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, EVs, everything you can throw in. But it's still my opinion. At the end, let the market decide.
Well, and I
Don't
think
force it.
there, and my observation would be in the last few weeks, there's been a distinct softening or softening through absence of dogmatic statements from lots of the environmental NGOs. Those who've been absolutely pushing for a battery electric vehicle only strategy have gone somewhat quiet. And I've also noticed an increasing frequency where they've talked about electric vehicles, meaning full electric vehicles, they're now increasingly bringing in plug-in hybrids to that view of the world,
Okay.
which is setting up, I think, what could be quite a, in a sense, smooth transition to a world of mixed solutions where those who've been the advocates accept the fact that hybrids are a necessary part of the world. It also means that regulators can still say, well, the unhybridized internal combustion engine is still going to be ended, so we will come to some middle way that both parties have moved a little bit, and there is a consensus around a mixed model. I think that's
Mm.
quite a likely way it will end up. But how the European election falls will probably determine where on that spectrum. How right the Parliament does go will
Yeah.
determine which way it goes, and that, by extension, will determine how sustainable the outcome is, and whether some of the Eastern European countries fracture in this and lead us back to a more internal combustion engine led world. That's also a fear I see. Do you think that is a possibility, that there'll be a fracturing of opinion within the
Yeah. Yeah.
European states?
The big problem of the European Union and the European Parliament is that they don't have a majority vote, they have a one vote. So if they come up with anything, it needs to be a unanimous decision. So everybody needs to agree to certain something. They can choose not to vote, or they have to vote for a proposal. If somebody is against this proposal, it's not going to happen. So what you just said, right wing or countries directed by right wing. I know everybody was afraid of Italy, but I think that the Italian president, she recognized pretty soon that the European Union can help her. So I don't see the big problem there. I see more what you just said, that there are countries in the European Union that have governments that lean a little bit towards Russia. Let's put it this way. And in all these votes, I know there was recently this vote on Ukrainian help, where then the Chancellor Scholz guided the Hungarian minister out of the room, so he cannot vote against it. So they had a unanimous vote on it. But yeah,
That's the classic way
this is really.
the classic way that the European Union democracy works, quietly ushering people
Yeah,
out
yeah.
of the room at the crucial
Yeah,
moment.
but that's in my eyes, that's BS. They need a majority vote. So,
Yeah.
so for the European Union to be really effective, I would say they need a majority vote. But this is not the podcast on European Union parliaments, so we should go back to motoring.
Exactly. Well, in fact, I think that we will probably leave it there for today. But I will, to end us off, I would actually draw a contrast between what's happening in the European Union and what's happening in the United Kingdom, where the fears that the European Parliament will swing rightwards, and that will have a particular effect on the combustion engine policy. In the UK, with a pending general election, which is likely to see
Yeah.
a more left wing government, we are going in the opposite
Okay.
direction. And because of that difference I mentioned at the beginning, us having no indigenously owned automotive
Yeah.
industry, it is quite possible that the UK will stick with the full fat hardcore version of the internal combustion engine ban just at the same time that the Europe may dilute it. What that could well look like is welcoming in huge numbers of subsidized, low priced Chinese electric
Mm.
vehicles. So the UK could find the fleet of vehicles on the road change very dramatically. It would
Mm.
enable the UK government to claim huge reductions in CO2, but by ignoring the manufacturing emissions created in China. So I would predict there'll be a divergence of
Mm.
behaviour between EU and UK. And then what we'll need to scrutinise very closely in the UK is whether it's just conspicuous activity or whether it's actually leading really to CO2 reductions and more sustainable motoring. But we'll know the general election is not so far off, so we will come back to this issue another day.
Yeah.
So, on that note, I'd like to say I'm Nick Molden from Emissions Analytics. Thank you very much, Oliver. Are there any final comments you'd like to add from Europe's side for today?
No, I think I totally agree with your proposal. Let's wait for both elections and then revisit the topic.
But this will be crucial for the outcome of this particular topic. So we'll talk about that on another day. Oliver, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.